Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are having a good morning. I'm actually just about to go to the airport and go to an awesome event with Dr. Terry Real, who is the founder of Relational Life Therapy, and I look forward to sharing with you what I learn over the weekend. But this morning before I left, I wanted to tackle a topic that comes up a lot. It's actually, I would say, at the root of 90% of the problems that I see in relationships. And I talk to a lot of people, and ultimately it all comes down to this problem. And so I wanted to bring it up because I think a lot of people don't recognize the connection between what appears to be the relationship problem and the deeper root of that problem. And that topic is emotional disconnection. The importance of emotional connection. Now, I talk to people a lot, like I said, and this comes up. People throw around the term, I feel emotionally disconnected, or I really want more emotional connection. But there's really a very specific meaning that I have when I refer to emotional connection, or the flip side of that, the disconnection. And I'm really drawing from Dr. Sue Johnson's definition. And she drew from attachment theory. And it's this idea that emotional connection, it's not just about emotional support. It's not just about validation, although that can be a component of it. Really what emotional connection is the deep knowing that your partner is there for you in a time of distress, that if you turn toward them, they will turn toward you, knowing that they are there for you, like with reasonable consistency. Obviously, in adult relationships, we're not always going to have every need met by our partner, so that's not really what I mean. What I mean is that knowing that they basically have your back, they're on your side, and it creates a primal sense of safety. So as a biological organism, we need to know that we are connected to others. We need to know that other people will protect us. But then in the emotional realm, sometimes it feels like the stakes are that high, like survival is at stake if I don't feel like my partner has my back. It feels really unsafe on a very physiological level. So emotional connection is just knowing that your person is there, that it's that you're not going to be judged, that you can speak your truth, and it's a safe place. So that's really what I'm talking about when I talk about emotional connection. And what I have found is that if you don't have that in your relationship, it causes all kinds of problems. So it's essentially, first of all, I mean, the obvious one is that you don't feel heard or understood, right? And that's a really lonely feeling. So if you feel like I'm sharing my feelings with my partner, I'm turning towards them in distress, but they're getting defensive, or they're hearing me in a different way than what I really mean. I'm sharing something about myself and they're hearing it through their lenses of what that means about them. That is a very lonely place to be, and that creates emotional disconnection. Defensiveness is a big block of emotional connection, same with blame, and same with just rushing in to try to fix something, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that emotional disconnection causes is frequent arguments, because the assumption is, even if you're not conscious of it, when you're emotionally disconnected, you're operating from the assumption that your partner's not on your team. They're not on your side. There's a little bit of a me versus you mentality, as opposed to an us mentality, a place of unity, a sense of knowing, hey, we're on the same team, working through together, and we're side by side, shoulder to shoulder, facing life's problems together. Instead, there's this sense of like, I need you to understand the rightness of my position. I really want to convince you of something, or they might feel like they need to convince you of something. And it's very much me versus you. And you end up not only arguing your positions and for some kind of objective truth, which there really isn't any objective truth in a relationship, but you also end up getting sidetracked by the tone, by how someone's talking to you, how your partner is, the energy that they're bringing to the conversation. It feels combative, it feels negative, it doesn't feel like you're operating from a place of closeness. And so this will exacerbate conflict, this will create more arguments than you need to be having, and it's a very negative space that's full of resistance and combat. So if you're in a high conflict relationship, that is likely at the root, is that you you aren't operating from a place of emotional connection. If you really felt like they understood your point of view, or if they really felt truly seen and heard, and you knew you were together in something, half of the problems you're fighting about would dissolve. That's how powerful this is. The other problem that comes up is poor communication, or even effective communication doesn't really land when you don't have emotional connection. So I talk about this in my webinar, if you've had a chance to listen to it, that a lot of couples approaches, a lot of traditional couples counseling approaches will focus on communication first. How do I say what I need to say? How can I bring an I statement to the table? How can I turn a complaint into a request? You know, really looking at the skills and the tools that you can learn. You can learn these things. But the thing is if you're not feeling emotionally connected, you are so much more likely to go into fight or flight mode. So whatever it is that you learn in terms of skills and tools and communication, it's not something you can access. Literally, your brain cannot access what you know and what you've learned and all of the wonderful communication tools that you want to bring to the table. You cannot access when you're operating from a place of disconnection, because you're going a little bit into that, like I say, me versus you, which is fight or flight. You might shut down. You might not hear what your partner is really saying in the moment because you're hearing it through the lenses of the past. If you are assuming that they don't have your best interest in mind, or if you are assuming that they don't really feel close to you, or that they don't really, that you're not being embraced by them on a deeper emotional level, if you're not feeling safe, then the filters that you have on are going to distort any communication that you have. You're also just more likely to have poor communication and to just not use what you know, like I said. So this leads to another problem, which is the inability to solve solvable problems. Now, I've talked about the fact that most long-term successful, fulfilling marriages will have some problems that are never solved, some issues, some disagreements where the partners just say, you know what, we agree to disagree, we never really saw eye to eye on it, but didn't matter. They had enough positive in their relationship that those disagreements or those areas where they don't line up are so marginal that it doesn't really impact the quality of their relationship. But when you're emotionally disconnected, you are far less likely to actually solve the solvable problems. Simple things, co-parenting things, how do we plan this vacation? How do we distribute labor around the house? Whatever it is that you could solve if you were emotionally connected far more easily becomes a sticking point, and you end up playing the same problem over and over again and not being able to make any headway. Once you get emotional connection, half of that stuff just melts away. And then you're able to access creative solutions that you didn't have before. Because when you're stuck in that, like, this is my position, this is your position, we just can't get, and we're in gridlock, we can't move forward, you are not able to even see what possibilities might exist in terms of creative problem solving. So that is a big problem that comes from emotional connection. Another huge one is loss of passion, loss of sexual desire, loss of intimacy in the marriage. This can happen either because your energy is so tied up in conflict that there's a block and you're just not able to open up that way. It could be because you're hanging on to resentment as a result of the disconnection, and so you don't want to be intimately connected. It feels too vulnerable, or it feels like it's not appropriate in the context of the disconnection. And it could just be that, I wish I felt like it, but I just don't feel like it. We've just moved into roommate mode, and now the passion is gone, that desire is gone, that sense of wanting to be close to my partner is gone. That comes back once the emotional connection is restored, and once the energy that's been engaged either in conflict or in keeping your walls up, once that's dissolved, there's like this flow between you that can bring that back. So I say that to offer a little bit of hope if you're in that place, because that's one of the biggest things that we see is, somebody will say, I really just don't want that with my partner anymore, or I want that, but my partner doesn't want to, or I don't even know how to go there because there's so much between us in the way of emotional disconnection. And then finally, there's health implications. So if you're not feeling safe with your partner and you don't have that sense of secure attachment with them, that sense of like belonging and primal safety, that actually creates higher cortisol levels. It puts people in a state of stress and anxiety that they might not even realize until they get to a place of connection. I talk to clients who, once they restore that connection, they realize how much stress in their body they were actually carrying around. That impacts our immune system, that impacts our just general feeling of wellness. It impacts, you know, our sense of calm and our ability to be in the present moment. So really this is, you know, a massive negative effect if you don't feel connected and close. And they've done studies on this, that people that feel alone in the world, even in a relationship, even if they're married and they see their spouse every day, if it's a disconnected relationship, that's almost worse, because there's the expectation and the hope and the sense of loss while you're with that person. And that definitely has health implications. Some people will tend to overeat. Some people will tend to self-medicate from the stress. Some people will lose a lot of sleep, or they lose their appetite. So maybe you can relate to this, but this cannot actually be overstated, the connection between emotional connection and our general sense of health. So if you're experiencing any of these symptoms of what I'm describing, look at your emotional connection. Look at if there's a way that you can improve that. I recommend not moving right into problem solving, not moving right into communicating and trying to tackle these hot button issues that you might be stuck with your partner. Instead, tune into, how can I create emotional connection with my spouse? And what I recommend, because I'm not suggesting communicating, there's ways that you can do this non-verbally, right? You can actually create a sense of connection through physical presence, through communicating your intention to be there and just listen, to receive. That shows up. People can read your body language, right? We know that over 90%, I don't remember the exact statistic, but at least over 90% of our communication and the spirit of what we're trying to communicate comes through non-verbally. So if you physically sit with your partner and you receive them and you look at them and you tune into them and you're just listening and you're not interjecting or trying to fix or reacting. And even if you are having a reaction, that you don't act on that reaction, but you notice it and you let it go and you go back to just receiving what your partner is saying or listening to them. Or just being with them for no reason, like sitting next to them with your body showing you're present. This could be holding hands. This could be a hug. This could be just increased eye contact when they're telling you something. Think about what works for your partner. You might have different love languages. But, you know, if you've been with somebody for over 20 years, you probably have a sense of what they need in terms of that sense of emotional connection. Empathy is a really big part of that. This, of course, can be expressed verbally in, you know, expressions of curiosity. Tell me more. I want to really understand your experience. But ultimately, it's the acceptance of, my partner's having this experience, and I am there for them in this experience. It doesn't matter if I agree with the premise of their feelings. It doesn't matter if I disagree with their cognitive framework that I feel like is underneath their feelings. It doesn't matter what, you know, I think about why they're feeling what they're feeling. It is that experience that they're having, and when you operate from a place of acceptance of that experience and just being with that without trying to fix it, without trying to do anything with it, that is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your partner. So if you're somebody that's been told, you know, by your wife or husband, I don't want you to fix it, I just want you to listen, really take that to heart. You really take that to heart. You might be right about your perception of something, but that's not what matters in creating emotional connection. And in fact, they're not even going to hear all of the wonderful things that you might have to offer. You might have great advice or great feedback or great input for your partner, but if you don't have that emotional connection first, that empathy first, they're not going to be able to even really hear you in the way that you want to be heard. It's sort of like when you're dealing with kids, and I'm not trying to compare because I don't believe that we as adults should be giving the same kind of unconditional love that we as parents give our children, especially when they're really little. But when we feel like we unconditionally are receiving that love from our partner and there's no judgment, that is one of the biggest gifts that we can give them. And it's like connecting and redirecting with kids. First I connect, then I redirect. If I come in and my kid is doing something they're not supposed to do, or they're in the middle of building blocks and it's time to go now, if I connect first, join their world, hear what they have to say, then I have a better chance of redirecting them and saying, okay, now we need to do this. It's the same idea, right? It's not an exact parallel, but it's the same idea. First connect, then when they feel heard, and there's probably going to be a sense of gratitude around that, they're going to be more likely to hear your reframe on it, you know? Like, look at it like this. Yeah, that I can take that in now because I know that you're not saying that from a place of I was wrong for feeling the way that I was feeling. So and then there's specific things that you can do depending on what your filters are, depending on what your limiting beliefs are, depending on what your history is, if you have a trauma history, what the specific challenges are that you've been dealing with in your relationship. If that's something that you want to talk about with me or one of my fantastic coaches, you can book a call, and it's a free call. We can talk about how to apply this in your relationship. And I also welcome comments or questions or engagement around this topic in the comments below this video. I and my coaches will be responding to any questions that you have about this topic. It is a really big topic, and I'm just sort of scratching the surface right now. But I wanted to just share this with you because it's come up a lot in the clients that I've spoken with and the people that I talk to just in general who are not my clients, but people that I'm just serving through my Facebook group and just in life in general. I really hear that this is at the root of so many things. So start there. That's my advice for you today. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful weekend.